My wife cheated while I was working double shifts to pay our mortgage, so I sold the house without telling her and left with every cent. I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I thought working hard was how you proved love. That's how my father raised me men show affection, not with words or flowers, but with sweat, consistency, and sacrifice. So when I married Lena, I wanted to build her a life where she'd never have to worry about bills, debt, or the kind of struggle I grew up watching my parents drown in. Lena was everything I wasn't: charismatic, magnetic, and effortlessly social. She worked from home as a freelance designer, and I used to brag about how talented she was. I'd scroll through her portfolio at night while eating reheated dinners, telling myself I was lucky to have someone so driven. When we bought our little house on Maple Street, it felt like the start of something sacred. The first night we slept there, she whispered, "This is our forever." And I believed her like a fool believes in promises made under warm light. I started picking up double shifts at the factory. Some nights, I'd get home past midnight, quietly slip into bed, and wrap an arm around her just to feel that I was doing it all for a reason. The sound of her soft breathing made the exhaustion worth it. Weekends became workdays. My palms hardened, my back ached, but every time I transferred another chunk toward the mortgage, I felt proud, like I was proving my devotion one payment at a time. I barely noticed the small things her sleeping in later. The way she'd say, "You don't have to work so much," with a smile that never reached her eyes. I thought she was just worried about me burning out. I didn't realize she was already drifting somewhere I couldn't follow. I remember telling myself, it's just a few more months. A few more months, and we'd finally be free. But back then, I didn't understand that I was the only one still building our future. And soon, I'd learned just how fragile that forever really was. Most mornings started before the sun even thought about rising. The alarm would pierce the quiet at 4:15 a.m., and I'd drag myself out of bed while Lena stayed curled beneath the blankets, her hair spilling across the pillow like some peaceful dream I could never afford. I'd brew cheap coffee, stand in the dark kitchen with my thermos, and tell myself this was what love looked like: sacrifice that no one else saw. By the time I got to the factory, the air always smelled of oil and metal. Machines roared louder than thoughts. My hands would ache halfway through the first shift, but I'd push through because each hour meant another brick in the foundation of our future. I'd think about Lena while I loaded crates, how she'd probably be designing something beautiful in her pajamas, music playing in the background. It made me smile. I wanted her to have that kind of life. When I got home late, the lights were often dim. She'd already eaten. Sometimes there'd be a plate waiting for me, sometimes not. She'd be scrolling through her phone, laughing at something I wasn't part of. "You're working too hard," she'd say softly, not looking up. "You don't have to kill yourself for this house." I'd just smile, kiss her head, and tell her it'll all be worth it soon. On my one day off, I'd try to do something special. Cook breakfast, take her out, make her laugh. But lately, she always seemed distracted. Her phone buzzed constantly, and when I'd ask who it was, she'd say, "Just a client." I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. Still, there were fleeting moments where I'd catch her looking at me like I was someone she used to love, not someone she still did. And even though I didn't know it yet, every hour I gave to that factory was one she was quietly taking away from us. It started with little things easy to overlook, easy to excuse. Lena began guarding her phone like it was a diary. She used to leave it face up on the counter while cooking, notifications lighting the screen every few minutes. Then one day, she started turning it face down. "Clients get weird," she said with a laugh when I asked, but her tone was off to casual, too rehearsed. She started going out more, saying she needed fresh air for inspiration. She'd come back with a new dress or new makeup, claiming she found a sale or had a meeting with the creative team. I didn't question it. I told myself I was lucky she was still chasing her passions, while I was just another guy covered in factory grease. But sometimes, when I'd come home early and catch her startled like she wasn't expecting MIT, felt like walking into a room right after a secret conversation ended. We sat together on the couch, the TV flickering between us. I reached for her hand, and she hesitated just for a second, but long enough for me to notice. "You okay?" I asked. She forced a smile. "Just tired. Been working all day." Her words said one thing, but her eyes didn't match. I started to notice new scents on her expensive colognes that didn't belong to me. Faint traces that lingered after she hugged me. She said they were from coworkers at meets, but the smell felt like proof of something I didn't want to face, because that's what you do when you love someone you find. Reasons to trust when everything around you whispers not to. I remember standing in our driveway one evening, watching her car disappear down the road, the sunset painting the sky orange and pink, and for the first time, the beauty of it didn't comfort me. It just made me wonder what else was fading while I wasn't looking. Doubt has a way of creeping in quietly. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and once it finds a corner in your mind, it starts to build a home there. I began noticing details I used to overlook. Lena's laughter from another room when she thought I wasn't home, the way she'd pause before answering simple questions, or how her client calls always seemed to happen right when I was leaving for my night shift. One Friday, I came home early because a power outage shut down the factory. I wanted to surprise her, maybe have dinner together for once, but when I opened the door, the lights were off, and the house smelled faintly like Cohen one that wasn't mine. Her car was in the driveway, yet she wasn't in sight. A minute later, she came out of the bathroom, wearing different clothes than the ones she'd posted on her Instagram story that morning. "You're home early," she said, voice tight, eyes wide. I told her about the outage, and she just smiled too quickly. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, listening to the rhythm of her breathing, wondering if she was dreaming about me or someone else. The next day, I confided in my best friend Derek during our lunch break. "You think she's seeing someone?" he asked cautiously. I shrugged, feeling pathetic for even considering it. "I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe I'm paranoid." He leaned back, wiping grease from his hands. "Install a camera or something. If you've got nothing to hide, neither should she." I wanted to laugh it off, but part of me couldn't. Still, I told myself I wasn't that kind of husband. I trusted her. I had to trust her. But later that week, when her phone lit up on the counter, I saw a message flash before it vanished. "Can't wait to see you again." My stomach dropped, and my heart started racing. I didn't confront her that night. I just stared at the ceiling, realizing trust doesn't always break loudly, it cracks in silence first. I tried to ignore the message. I really did. I told myself it could have been a friend, a coworker, maybe even some stupid meme. But that thought didn't last. The next few days felt like living inside a fog. Her every movement became a clue, every text a potential confession. The way she smiled at her phone, the quiet giggles in another room. The sudden switch to work talk when I walked in it, all added up to a truth I wasn't ready to face. One night, around midnight, I woke up to the sound of running water. Lena was in the shower, music playing from her phone on the counter. That's when something inside me broke. I walked over to her desk, opened her laptop, and felt my heart hammering like I was about to commit a crime. The screen came alive and there it was, a chat window. Dozens of messages, pictures, words that no husband should ever have to read. She wasn't talking to a client. She was talking to Evan, a coworker from one of her design projects. Messages about how he made her feel alive again. How I was too busy playing the hero. My hands shook as I scrolled through months of betrayal. I saw their plans, their jokes, their mockery. "How," she said. "He's too tired to notice anyway." When the shower stopped, I barely had time to close the laptop and slip back into bed. My pulse was racing, but my face stayed still. She crawled beside me, kissed my shoulder, whispered, "You're up late." I muttered something about insomnia, staring into the dark. I didn't sleep at all. I just kept hearing her voice in my head, replaying every "I love you" she ever said, wondering which ones were real and which were rehearsed. Before I left, I walked through the house one last time. The faint outline of our wedding photo was still visible on the wall where I'd taken it down. The kitchen smelled faintly of her vanilla candles. I could almost hear her laughter echoing off the walls. It didn't hurt anymore, it just felt empty. I changed the locks, turned off the lights, and dropped the keys into the new owner's mailbox. Then I drove off without looking back. By the time Lena returned 2 days later, the house was sold, the locks replaced, and the driveway empty. My phone was disconnected. My social media wiped clean when she tried to log in to our joint account. All she found was a balance of 0. For the first time in years, I was free and she was finally forced to see what life looked like without the man she thought she could use forever. I stayed completely off the grid for weeks. No calls, no emails, no trace. The first few days were the hardest. Muscle memory kept making me reach for my phone to check on her, to see if she'd texted. But I didn't. I let silence do what anger never could: unsettle her. By the end of the first week, the messages started piling up in my private inbox, desperate ones from Lena. Where are you? Why can't I get into the house? Did you take the money? And finally, please, let's talk. I can explain, but there was nothing left to explain. When she realized I wasn't coming back, her panic turned to fury. She showed up at my old job, screaming in the parking lot, demanding answers. My supervisor called to tell me she was ranting about theft and betrayal, accusing me of abandoning her with nothing. The irony nearly made me laugh. The woman who'd stolen my trust, my money, my years, was now the one claiming to be the victim. Word spread fast. Small towns have big mouths, and gossip travels quicker than justice. People started whispering when they learned the truth. Screenshots of her messages with Evan made their rounds online. Apparently, one of her friends she'd confided in leaked everything after she tried to spin the story in her favor. She lost clients, credibility, and whatever sympathy she thought she had left. Even Evan backed out, cutting her off completely once the heat got too real. Meanwhile, I was living quietly 3 towns away in a small cabin Derek helped me find. The days were quiet, peaceful, the kind of silence that doesn't feel lonely, it feels earned. Sometimes I'd picture her standing outside our old home, realizing every lie she told had finally built her own cage. And for once, I didn't feel angry. Just ... done. She used my hard work to build a fantasy, and I used her lies to build my freedom. Months have passed since that day, and I've rebuilt my life from the ground up, quietly, deliberately, and without apology. The cabin I bought sits on the edge of a lake, surrounded by tall pines that hum in the wind. Some mornings I wake before sunrise just to sit on the porch with my coffee, listening to the world start fresh. It's peaceful in a way I never thought peace could feel. No noise, no lies, no pretending. Just me. I never contacted Lena again. She tried reaching out through mutual friends' emails, even a handwritten letter that Derek handed to me unopened. I didn't need to read it. I already knew what it would say. Apologies, excuses, maybe tears on the page, but I'd spent years drowning in her words. I wasn't about to sink again. I did hear through the grapevine that things didn't go well for her. The affair blew up. She lost clients, her credit tanked, and she had to move back in with her parents. For a moment, I wondered if she blamed me, but then I realized it didn't matter. She created her own destruction. I just walked away before it burned me too. One night, I sat at my desk and opened a blank email draft. I started typing the words I'd carried for months. I worked double shifts for love. You worked double lives for attention. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over send, before finally deleting it. She didn't deserve my words anymore. Silence was the loudest message I could send. When people ask me if I'd ever take her back, I just smile and say, I already did once and it cost me everything. I used to think revenge had to be dramatic, loud, and brutal. But the truth is, the quiet kind. The kind where you simply disappear and live better than they ever imagined. That's the most devastating revenge of all. Asterisk. By morning, I wasn't angry yet, just hollow. And that's when something in me shifted from heartbreak to quiet observation. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I needed to see just how deep the lies went. A few days after discovering the messages, I began noticing details that didn't fit small, practical things that didn't make sense. The mortgage statement was higher than usual. A new charge appeared on our joint account labeled personal loan disbursement. My stomach tightened as I logged into the bank portal. There, it was $25,000 taken out under both our names, supposedly for home renovations. Except no renovation had ever happened. At first, I thought it was some kind of error, but the transaction history was clear. Lena had signed the paperwork digitally. I stared at the screen for a long time, realizing she'd taken out a loan I never knew about. I opened her email next to her. My breath caught when I saw receipts. Plane tickets to Miami boutique hotel stays, and transfers to a name that made me feel physically 11 Carter. It wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. She'd used our money, my overtime pay, to fund vacations with him, to buy him gifts, to live a fantasy life, while I broke my back building a real one. That night, Lena came into the kitchen as I was staring at a spreadsheet. "Everything okay?" she asked, reaching for a glass. I looked at her, trying to hide the storm boiling inside me. "Yeah," I said. "Just checking numbers." Thinking about how much we've paid off, she smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're amazing. You know that." I wanted to laugh as she walked away. I realized something. If I exploded now, she'd spin it against me. Cry, lie, manipulate. No, she didn't deserve that satisfaction. Instead, I decided to play dumb, keep pretending, let her believe I was the same blind, loyal husband she'd underestimated. Because now, I wasn't just a broken man, I was a man planning, and soon. I'd make sure she understood exactly what working double shifts had taught me: patience. Once I decided to stay quiet, everything around me took on a strange, almost cinematic clarity. Every laugh she faked, every phone call she hid behind client work, every time she called me babe, like it still meant something at all, became data evidence patterns. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was her silent witness. Lena started taking more business trips. She'd leave with a single suitcase and come back 3 days later, smelling like perfume that cost more than my weekly groceries. She'd toss her clothes into the laundry and joke, "You'd be so bored if you came with me?" I'd just smile, kiss her cheek, and say, "Someone's got to keep the lights on." She'd laugh, thinking she'd won. But while she was gone, I was busy meeting with a real estate lawyer. I found out that since my name was on both the mortgage and deed donned, I'd made nearly all the payments. I had full rights to sell the property without her consent. The idea felt like a live wire in my chest. Dangerous, tempting. I wasn't sure I'd go through with it yet. But the thought alone gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. At home, I started leaving subtle tests. I'd mention random names like Evan to see if she'd flinch. She never did, but sometimes her hand would tighten around her coffee cup just slightly, her smile too perfect. I knew then she thought she was untouchable. I started quietly moving important documents, heirlooms, and personal items to a storage unit. Derek helped me rent. "You sure about this?" he asked one evening as we loaded boxes into his truck. I nodded. "Not yet," I said, "but soon." And as I watched him drive away under the streetlight's glow, I realized something chilling. Lena had no idea. The story she thought she was writing was about to end. On my terms, it was a Sunday afternoon when everything I'd been holding together finally cracked. I wasn't supposed to be home. The factory had offered overtime, but the shift was canceled last minute. I didn't text Lena, I just drove home, thinking maybe I'd surprise her with takeout and a quiet evening together. Maybe, deep down, I was still hoping I was wrong about her. But when I turned onto our street, I saw a car in the driveway, silver BMW I didn't recognize. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep driving. I circled the block once, twice, then parked a few houses down. The curtains in our living room were half closed, but I could still see silhouettes, 2 of them. Her laugh floated through the air when I walked closer, that soft, familiar sound that used to be my favorite thing in the world. Through the glass, I saw her pouring wine, wearing the dress I bought her for our anniversary. Evan sat across from her, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, relaxed, at home. My home. They clinked glasses. She leaned forward and kissed him, and in that moment, the world just went quiet. I didn't storm and I didn't scream. I just stood there, hidden in the fading light, watching the life I built crumble behind those walls. I'd imagined this moment 100 times, but nothing prepares you for the hollow that follows. My throat burned, my vision blurred. But no tears came, just a steady, cold kind of heartbreak that settled into my bones. When I finally drove away, I didn't go home, I couldn't. I checked into a cheap roadside motel, the kind with flickering neon lights and paper-thin walls. I stared at the ceiling all night, the hum of the air conditioner, the only sound between my thoughts. That was the night my love for her finally died, and what replaced it wasn't regret, was resolve. Something inside me hardened after that night. The pain didn't fade, it just became sharp, focused, almost surgical. I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like a strategist. Every moment she spent believing she'd fooled me became fuel for what I was about to do. I went back to the house the next morning, pretending nothing had happened. She greeted me with a lazy smile, acting surprised. "I thought you were working overtime," she said, stretching. "Shift got canceled," I replied flatly. She kissed my cheek, oblivious to the fact that I'd seen her with him less than 12 hours ago. The smell of wine still lingered in the kitchen. My stomach churned, but I smiled anyway. Over the next few weeks, I played my role to perfection. I brought home flowers, asked about her projects, even left encouraging notes in her workspace. Meanwhile, behind her back, I was moving money into a private account, transferring assets, and finalizing the quiet preparations for the sale of the house. My lawyer confirmed everything legally. I was in the clear. She'd forfeited any moral claim the moment she signed that secret loan. Derek became my silent accomplice. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked one evening as we boxed up my father's old watch and photo albums. "You could just leave." I shook my head. "No, she doesn't get to live in the house I bled for. Not with him." Every night, I'd lie beside her, listening to her breathe, wondering how she could sleep so peacefully next to the man she'd betrayed. Sometimes she'd mumble in her sleep, whispering a name that wasn't mine. Those nights, I'd get up quietly, check the escrow progress, and remind myself that revenge doesn't always have to be loud to be devastating. And when the final papers were ready, I looked at the folder on my desk and whispered to myself, "Almost there." Because this time, the man she thought was too tired to notice was wide awake. The day everything fell into place was painfully ordinary. The kind of day you'd never expect to end a marriage. Lena left that morning for another one of her work trips. I kissed her goodbye at the door, pretending not to notice the suitcase that wasn't hers, which was new, sleek, expensive. "Don't overwork yourself," she said sweetly, touching my cheek. I smiled. Wouldn't dream of it. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and signed the final documents. The sale had gone through. The money, every cent of it, was already in my private account. I sat there for a while, staring at the confirmation email, realizing that this house, once our dream, was no longer ours. It was mine, and now it was gone. I moved fast. By sunset, I had emptied the house of everything I wanted to keep: important documents, valuables, memories that weren't poisoned by her lies. Derek helped me haul the last box into the truck. When he asked, "Where will you go?" I just said, "Anywhere but here."